Sidney Crosby missed practice on Wednesday. He went out before practice. He does something similar to what Joe Pavelski and many others do, which is the tip drill and some other stuff. He left before team practice today. He had a collision with Luke Hughes and Eric Holla of the Devils on Tuesday night. I watched this. I don't know if you guys saw this. It looked more like the secondary bump with Holla into his left arm was what caused trouble. Crosby said, I just got tangled up. They asked him for any follow-up. He said I got tangled up. He wasn't going to say anything, but he was doubled over holding his left arm, so it could have been shoulder, it could have been forearm, it could have been elbow. This leads me to an interesting question, because we're not a Pittsburgh Penguins show, but the Four Nations is coming up. What happens for Team Canada if Sidney Crosby can't play? For a couple of questions. One, they have lots of depth, right? Mark Scheifele's not even on the team. You could bring him in a second. But Crosby's the captain of Canada. He is expected to be the captain next year for the Olympics. If he, for some reason, is hurt,
97 will have the C on, if you're wondering that.
Does that
for sure.
Does it pass the torch? Is that it?
Yeah, of course.
But not just for this tournament, but does that make him the guy that goes ahead for the Olympics too, even if Crosby can play?
Well, I mean, if Crosby could play, I think as long as Sid is playing hockey, he's going to wear the C, regardless of where they are. He is Captain Canada.
Yeah.
There's no question there. And the next guy in line, because I think they kind of want to portray this whole thing NHL wise, is maybe 97 against the other guy from Toronto. That's what I think.
34.
I think that's kind of would be Matthews versus.
Pretty fun.
I just think that's kind of how they did it, but with or would have liked to do it. But with Crosby there, he's always going to be wearing the C. I mean, he is, he's Canada, he's hockey, he's NHL. So you just wonder. And again, I don't think if this was on a like a Pietrangelo kind of thing, get some rest while you're gone, that kind of stuff. Sid's probably not going to be in the playoffs this year. You know what I mean? So
they have a chance, but so do about 8 other teams.
Yeah, I just can't see that happening.
I was just going to say one thing that worries me, two-part, is McDavid's never played in one of these.
Right.
Which is crazy to think about, the fact that he's been the best
Do
player
you think he's going to be going? No, I mean going.
Oh, yeah, he's going to be going.
I mean going.
And that's the thing that I know this is important, and we mentioned this when the Pietrangelo thing first came out. Like, this isn't nothing to these players. It's not the Olympics, but it's not nothing. These guys want to be part of this tournament. My other point is, can we get to this dang tournament so players can stop getting hurt? I'm so worried that Crosby's going to drop out and we're going to get another injury in the next few games here. Like, for fans' sake, I just want this tournament to start so that we can have a healthy team.
That's more of a Four Nations debate about should it be at the beginning of the season? Should it be a preseason tournament in September before everybody is played 50-plus games in the NHL?
I think you got a bigger chance of injury before you start skating and things like that too. I mean, because you're not in hockey shape at that
There's
time.
There's no good way to do it.
The problem that I have with the whole thing is, and it's always going to be like this, is these are the guys that you lean on heading into the playoffs.
Yeah.
The best players in the world are going to be best players, and they get called to do all the things off the ice, on the ice, and because again, look at for the next couple of weeks when all the rest of the guys are going to be on vacation and resting and being ready to go, and then you come back and whether it would have been Miro, Rupe, Essa, guys like that, they're again they're not like they're playing 7 games while they're gone, but even still, they're not getting. Well, they are going to get a bit of a break, aren't they? Going to get some kind of break when they come back?
It depends on if they have to play in the championship game or not.
How many days would be in between the final game and then their? I guess everybody would be just one game.
Day
that's
off.
it.
If they're in the championship, it's on the 20th, and they play the Devils on the 22nd.
Yeah,
if they lose before then, the last game for Jake would be
all
the 17th.
4 teams play in Boston on Monday the 17th.
Yeah.
If you don't play in the championship game, you get Tuesday through Friday to recover before you play Saturday. Mm-hmm. So it would make a difference
that weekend too.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just wish they would build it in the schedule. You can't do it for teams that they could get 3 days, 4 days
agree.
off. Make it a little bit longer, but it's
so that's the debate about why you have 4 nations now, right? Now, why is it this coming week? Because it's after football, right? The Super Bowl is Sunday. 4 Nations starts Wednesday after the Super Bowl. If you play it in September before training camp starts or concurrent with training camp, you're playing it right in the early months of the NFL season.
Yeah.
And if it's an NHL,
and there's some baseball sport going on.
There's some baseball sport going on, and they're pushed to the playoffs. But it's really the NFL and college football TV ratings that I think that they were worried about. If you do that, this is an NHL property. It's not the Olympics, which goes where the Olympics goes. We are trying to put this where we can get the most eyeballs, sponsorship, tickets, all those things. Is that the right time to do it?
Pete called it a prelude to the Olympics, and I think in more ways than one it is, and maybe that's part
because
of it as well.
It's almost getting the teams ready for that.
This is what's
going
to happen next year, so let's do it this year.
And eyeballs.
And it's shorter.
Yeah,
and eyeballs.
You had an interesting point about Pete that you wanted to bring up about Four Nations. Excuse me, while we're on the topic.
Yeah. So we talked to Pete a little bit right before they left. We were trying to get as many questions as we could because a lot of us aren't obviously on this trip in California, and then they go right on the break right after this trip. So, but Pete talked a little bit about the Four Nations, and I'm curious, Luds, we can dive into this more during the next week when we're actually in it. But Pete mentioned something about bringing back concepts and ideas and things from a tournament like this. He said you always learn things, bring back more things to bring to your team. What type of stuff does a coaching staff, player, anybody really that goes to this tournament, what can they bring back to use for this Dallas team?
Yeah, I think what you do is you learn about players. I don't think it's so much about systems. I don't think John Cooper's going to say, hey, here's what we're going to play. We're going to use our power play and our breakout, and here's the breakout that we find that works the best for us. I mean, DeBoer's going to go, oh, yeah, here's what they do when we play them in the finals this year. So, yeah, I think it's kind of generic. I don't think they're going to share. But, again, this league is so open. Everybody knows everything about them. There's so many scouts and watching the game like that. And I just don't think they're an open book. Oh, but here, let's all hand in our coaching manuals, to the head coach and the GM, and let's everybody go through them.
That's funny you said that, though, because Pete actually said he said you have to be an open book when you go to these.
Yeah.
He said as coaches, we're not, because I think someone asked him if there was any gamesmanship. And he was like
hiding your secrets from one coach
to
another?
He said, first of all, no, we don't. You have to be an open book. It's part of taking this job. But second is like what you just said, which is there's no secrets anymore.
I'm supposed to drive 7-8 miles an hour on the way home too. I don't do that either. I mean, I'm just saying they're not an open. But again, what do you think that those coaches that are part of whichever team doesn't know about every other team that they play and watch and scout and scour?
What drives me nuts about not naming your starting goalie because you think it might give you an advantage, not giving your lines in the morning. What are you doing? You're making a video coach.
I think
or
all
an
that
assistant.
stuff has got to be for us so that we can talk about it.
It's for us to talk about it, for fans
don't care.
Right, but they do because if they didn't think it gave them an advantage, they wouldn't withhold that stuff before important games, especially the playoffs.
I think it's only injury. I think if it's a player, even if Mark Stone isn't going to be in the lineup or Miro's not going to be in the lineup, are you gonna play him? Are you gonna play the game differently against that team?
But they don't. But then why don't coaches do it?
I don't know.
I think they believe that if it causes an assistant coach or a video coach to spend an extra 20 minutes.
I don't know. I hear Pete do all of his morning things. Well, I don't listen that much, but he tells you who's not going to play.
Yeah,
he's out. So what more do you want to know?
Well, no, but not every coach is as forthcoming as Pete. And two, this is middle of the season, Pete. When we get toward the playoffs, if there's question marks, all of a sudden it gets real quiet.
Well, because things will change in the playoffs. You're
That's
starting.
my point.
Yeah, but we're talking about the regular season.
Right.
Everybody knows everything, and again, even no matter what they're going to have in place, you're going to figure it out in the first game.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally. I
if
agree.
they're all of a sudden going to play a traditional, hey, let's play this way in our zone, and we're not going to play man on man now, or vice versa, we're going to do that. By the end of or halfway through the first period, you're going to go, hey, they're playing man on man. Hey, they're not playing man on man.
Yep.
Make an adjustment just like that. It doesn't. I mean, and again, they're not flying somebody in for the game.
But what if it gives them 5 minutes of a slight advantage? Is that a big deal? I know. I'm not saying it is.
I don't think the game and the series is going to change on 5 minutes.
I don't either. But coaches certainly think that they have state secrets that they can't share. A couple other things real quick before we go on the NHL news and notes front. Marcus Petterson, who was traded this past week to Vancouver, has signed a 6-year contract extension today. It's $33 million. That's a $5.5 million AAV. That's good money for a veteran defenseman. But that was what Jim Rutherford and Patrick Alvin, their GM and their president of hockey operations, had said was they weren't just trying to get Petterson as a rental.
They need to trade Elias Pettersson now. He can't have They can't have
two.
two, and
Three
now
Pettersons?
currently 3 Pettersons on the same
They have
team.
2 Elias Pettersons, which is confusing enough.
That's crazy. The announcers were making a joke out of it the other day. But
2 Ahos too?
There are,
Yeah.
but they don't play on the
They're not
same
the same
team
team,
at
though.
least.
not even the same conference. Oh, no, they are in the same conference.
But
Is he still on the
same
Islanders?
name?
I think so.
Yeah,
Same
Sebastian
everything.
Aho.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's just ridiculous.
Elias Pettersson and Sebastian Aho times 2. We need
Yeah.
more of that. What do you think of Petterson? I thought he was
Marcus?
someone who was probably
The
Marcus.
defenseman?
That was probably on the
Like
Stars'
him.
radar,
Yeah.
I
other
like
than
him.
maybe
Yeah.
the money.
I mean, honestly, if he was a right shot, I think
Yeah.
the Stars would have been in on him more. But it's just because he's left, they have enough left-handed guys. So, we talked about Ryan Hartman getting suspended. Well, the Wild may be anticipating that he's not going to be available. 10 games is a lot, right? That's a big chunk of the season, maybe a month.
Especially with a
or
2-week
not-
break in
well,
the middle of it.
Not quite a month, but yeah, it's going to be a little bit.
half of what's left, isn't it? Aren't they in the mid-20s right now?
30, I'd say, maybe.
30 games left?
Yeah, 28, 30 games, something like that. So they claimed 30-year-old Vinny Hinostroza from the Nashville Predators off waivers. And Hinostroza actually started in the AHL with Milwaukee this year, but he spent, 370 games or so in the NHL, played with the Blackhawks a lot. And that's just Minnesota looking for a guy. Luds, between the injuries that Minnesota has and the suspension and some of the issues they've had, obviously, with Kaprizov, is it just a wonder that they're where they're at in the standings because of their goaltending?
It is because of their goaltending. I'm surprised. I'm surprised they haven't plummeted. I really am. But again, a lot of your system can carry you through too. I mean, you can't always just pin it on the goaltender and say he's been unbelievable. If they can find ways to keep pucks out of certain areas of the ice that you can kind of survive and hang around there. But again, you need your best guys in the lineup, and so with Kirill, they for sure playoff time. I mean, you're not going anywhere in playoffs without that guy.
Thanks to everyone who joined on our television platforms. Make sure to like and subscribe here on the pod and check out alldlls.com. Okay, back to the show. Sam, your thoughts on what Luddy was saying without Kirill and what they've done with their goaltending?
I was just looking. They are, while they haven't plummeted, they are 28th in the NHL since January 15th.
That's not very good.
They are not doing very well. And if you look at the standings, that's why I looked, because I was just looking at the standings. There's a bunch of teams that are like 3-7-0 and 2-8-0 in their last 10.
I knew we were in the 20s too. 29 games.
29.
Yeah, okay.
That's pretty close.
Yeah, 29 versus 30.
That's
You
pretty
win.
close. I mean,
guys knew.
if you look at the
Making sure it started with a
Do you
2.
think that's this what Sam's talking about? A lot of teams.
I was trying to make sure I knew that.
So he said there's a bunch of teams that are sub 500 in their last 10 games. Is that catching up to them because
Yep.
of all these games and condensed schedules and everything?
Yep.
Yeah, it
I
goes-
think the schedule has a lot to do with it.
Minnesota
Vegas
right
is
now.
Vegas is 30th in the last 14
Yeah,
games.
they haven't been good the last.
No, and they're 4 points behind Edmonton right now for first in the Pacific.
Yeah, there's some teams going the wrong way. St. Louis, I mean, the right below Dallas, the teams that are in that, not the third spot, but like that wild card spot that we're keeping
Calgary,
an eye on with St.
Vancouver,
Louis and all them.
Utah,
A
St.
lot of them have been
Louis,
losing games too.
Anaheim. I'll tell you, that's why we were so adamant earlier in the year when the Stars had the little dip where they dropped down in the wild card spot and were in danger of being out of a playoff spot. Yeah, they had games in hand, but you want to be up where they're at.
You got to
right?
win those.
Now, look, 10 points behind the Winnipeg Jets, won 7 in a row. I've said this
An
the whole time.
anomaly.
I don't think that it matters that the Stars try to catch Winnipeg.
Nope.
What they need to do is stay out of that cluster of teams around wild card spot number 2. That's the most important thing, because if you know that you're a playoff team and you don't have to win games in the last week of the season for that, if it's for standings, great. But if you know you're in, it makes 2 things. 1, it's a lot less stressful for everybody, fans, players, coaches, management. 2, the management goes out and makes trades, right? Jim Nill made those trades. You talked about that earlier, Sam. I think that there will be something else, whether it's another forward or another defenseman, but I think it's going to be a lot closer to the March 7th deadline.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Jim's back on his original plan of waiting until after the break and seeing what they actually need, especially with every day someone else seems to be going down with this team right now. But going back,
But that's not just Stars. That's
No,
everybody.
everybody. Yeah, that's
the
why
whole league is dealing with injuries.
and that's why I said I'm worried about this Four Nations tournament, is because we don't want this to be a bunch of unhealthy asterisks on teams. Oh, USA could have won, but they're missing blank, 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 and that's kind of the worry when you get these tournaments. But looking at the playoff way it is right now, I mean, Dallas playing Minnesota in the first round, I'll take that all day,
All day.
especially
All
as a
day
home
long.
team. Edmonton currently gets Colorado.
I would sign up for that. I want Colorado to have to go through.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Edmonton,
If-
Colorado. Someone
if you could-
is out of those two. in the first round.
If you could keep Colorado out of the Central so that the Stars only had to go through, and I say only, Minnesota and then Winnipeg, that's not going to be easy, but just one, like, to me, while Dallas did beat Colorado last year, they have those two players, McKinnon and Makar, that can beat you even if their goaltending is subpar, even if the rest of their team is lacking. Those two guys, it's like playing McDavid. It's the X factor.
Edmonton, if it stays the way it is now, Edmonton would play Colorado in the first round and Vegas in the second round.
That's exactly.
That's
hey,
Dallas
I hope they have
last season. Yeah.
All right, last one for you. Nico Hischier placed on IR, retroactive to January 25th. Upper body injuries, week to week. He missed 4 games already. He will miss his 5th on Thursday, aka today. Sam, you've covered the Devils a lot in your previous iterations and living in New Jersey. Just how big of a deal is it for them to not have Nico Hischier right now?
He's the heart and soul of that team. He really is. He's one of the more underrated captains in the NHL. He's so good both ways. Reminds you a little bit of Rope Hands. Not the style necessarily, but just so reliable. Can play in all areas. It's a good thing Switzerland's not in the Four Nations because that would be a bummer for them.
Out.
He'd be their top player. I think they called up Simone Nemec, who's a really big prospect for them. So for the Devils, it's always an interesting one with their injuries because we've seen them get through it because they have guys like Bratt and Hughes and Dawson Mercer that just have been lighting it up. But then we saw last year where they couldn't overcome it. So you hope this isn't one of them. As someone who roots for that team and a little bit out of knowing some of the players and personalities around there, that's one that can hurt a lot, and you just hope it doesn't detriment them. I think they have a pretty nice bubble on that wild card, but I haven't looked at specifically.
Oh yeah, they're at 66 points, and that's 3rd place in the Metro, but they have a 7-point gap over Columbus for 4th in that division. Luddy, speaking of which, I'm just looking at this, and this will be our last topic of our quick thing. Ottawa Senators in 3rd place in the Atlantic and
it might
surging.
Get there
Battle of Ontario.
This is a team that at the beginning of this year with Ullmark, who's been he could come back from injury. They were worried that maybe they just wouldn't figure it out, but they're really taking a step.
They've kind of went back and forth this year, and now it seems like right now that they're starting to find their game. They need that goaltending. That's what they need. They need the goaltending. They've learned to play a little bit better in their own end, and I think that's where it's starting to help them. Is they're trying to buckle down on that part of the game, and they brought in different people to come there and get them to buy in, and I think they are. So
it's an interesting team. And then I look at Detroit, who've now won 7 in a row after losing to Dallas, and they are in the first wild card. Tampa's in the second wild card, and Boston is on the outside. Now, again, they've played more games. They're tied with Tampa. Tampa has 4 games in hand.
Boston's not making the playoffs.
So
that's what I'll say.
This is something, and this is my last question for you, because, boy, Columbus, we're all cheering for, but they're on the outside right now. Islanders have been really good lately. They've won 8 out of 10, but they're still 3 points out of a spot. The Rangers, 4 points out. Montreal, I can see why you said Pittsburgh. Philly's down there. They're all in this cluster. Boston's not used to being in this position, at least not in the last 5-6 years where they're used to being one of the better teams. Could we see a sell-off here if they get to March 7th, or is that going to be something they just won't do?
It would I'm keeping an eye on their captain.
Yep.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Right? He doesn't have a contract.
Wouldn't you love to see him in Dallas?
Little rumors about it.
I mean, he could be a rental for a year, and then maybe he goes back to and wants to finish his career there. But that would be a nice little ad, wouldn't it?
Every time they say, "Oh, rental and you'll get him back," I always think that's dangerous, because especially for a player that's only played for one team, right? You say, well, maybe we'll entice him back. Once you get a chance to see how another organization runs things, might be different room, different culture, different travel style. It may not be better or worse, just, maybe I could go experience something else for a little bit. With a finite career, sometimes you've played for 3 or 4 teams, right? And you actually got to move with one team and try a different city without having to change teams. It's kind of nice to, when you look back, to have played in a couple
I never had
markets.
that option. They didn't want me back. I didn't
Especially if there's a little less drama.
But think about it.
Marchand is a Boston Bruin.
But you got to play in Montreal. You played 1 year in New York. You have Minnesota and then Dallas. You got to experience some very different markets in your career.
Yeah, I was very lucky. And you go from one organization that at the time had won 26, 27 Stanley Cups to another organization that won 4 in a row. You know what I mean? Like, so, and then when we got to Minnesota, you know, you could feel it. And I was in contact with as it was moving along. So, and I kind of, hey, we want to bring this guy. Oh, really? And then there's this guy. Oh, is that right? Oh, yeah. Okay. You know, so
you could see the plan.
Well, and you know the guy that's driving the bus, and you know that he's motivated because he's only won 5 or 6 or 7 Stanley Cups too. So, you know, so like I said, when you get around those guys, and when any player that's won a championship, you know, they'll go anywhere to win another one. They'll do whatever it takes, and that's why I said I could see a guy like Brad Marchand. You know, I could see him going someplace and wanting to finish as a Bruin. It would be hard for me to see that he goes to whatever team it may be and say, oh, man, I love it here in 2.5 months, even if he wins a championship.
What if he goes and plays a little third-line center on a Dallas Stars team that wins the Stanley Cup?
That's exactly who I was talking about, by the way. But I just don't see that he would say, oh, yeah, I want to sign 3 years here. I think he wants to go back.
I don't know if they can afford him anyway with all the things they have.
Well, you never cap is going up, though, guys.
I mean, the cap's going up, and these guys, if maybe they get here and all of a sudden they're like, I think we can win one more here. You know what I mean?
Seems like a Jim Nill type of player.
Yeah. Oh, well, I use Pat Verbeek a lot. He's that kind of guy that everybody hates playing against, but once he's in your organization and on your team, especially in the locker room, you're like, thank God I don't have to have you sticking me in the face and licking me and everything else that Marchand does.
Choking you without your job.
But you're on my side now.
Well,
so.
Even in the chat, people were saying they hated Corey Perry. Then he became a Dallas Star and went, wow, what a great teammate.
Yeah.
And he was.
Some of the biggest goals,
Yeah. Well, that's going to do it for our show today. We hope you enjoyed this. We have a pregame show tomorrow night late again, another Stars After Dark. 9 o'clock Central Time. Stars and LA Kings will drop the puck just after 9:30. So we'll be here. Kat will be doing our pre and post. You know that she's getting that chat going early and often. We'll have a lot of fun.
We're 30 minutes
late
earlier
night
on Saturday.
So then Saturday against the Sharks,
Nice and early.
John will be back.
Yeah.
It'll still be remote.
J-Man.
Can you imagine what producer John would be like if the Stars traded for Brad Marchand?
I don't want to see producer John in New Orleans. I want to see some video
Don't
footage
be
of
starting
that.
rumors now.
I'm just saying, if it happened, he'd be both upset and giddy in such a weird yin and yang. I don't even know how he'd handle it. Probably need a week off. But enough of that. For Craig Ludwig, Sam Nestler, I'm Owen Newkirk. For our producer today, TC Fleming, thanks for joining us on the DLLS Dallas Stars podcast.
We all silly like the mayor.